Okay, good day, grade 11 students. Okay, a quick one. Let's talk about computer files. That's the topic for this period. Okay, computer files. Okay, and first and foremost, let's look at the objective. Number one objective is we'll define what file is. Then objective two, we look at the file. What is the file name? Objective three, we look at the types of files that we have. We look at different types of files we have. You know, the historical file, the library files. Talk about that one, the types of files. Then we'll now talk about file organization. Here we talk about master file. We talk about reference file and a few other things like that. Right. So let's look at let's continue. Let's look at the definition first of all. Definition of a computer file. A computer file can be defined as a resource for storing information, the resource that uses to store information, which is available to a computer program and is usually based on some kind of durable storage. That is one benefit of computer files. Durability, the ability to store large files in a very small device, and you can carry them around. Right? Okay. You can also use them, for multiple what's it called, functions at the same time. You understand? Like you can use them for multiple functions, right? So one of the benefits compared to manual files. Okay, so one more time, definition: a computer file is a resource for storing information which is available to a computer program and is usually based on some kind of storage. Okay, right? So that's the definition of a computer file. Then let's also consider. It says we continue by saying the system of creating a file on the computer is not different from the traditional way used in an office. Each form in a file is known as a record. Yes, each form you have inside the file. When you have your regular manual file, you keep different forms in it. Okay, so each forms you have there is a record kept. Different files contain different information. Like you have. I don't know if you have been to a company, an office before where you have file cabinets. You have different files that talk about different things. You have files that might be referred to, that be used to keep financial documents. You also have files that might be used to keep what's it called, other list of available items in the office. You have files that you use to keep the names of staffs in the office. So you have different files, like in your school. You have files that we used to keep the names of the students in the school. Then you probably have a file that used to keep those who are paid and those who are not paid in school. You have files that will be used to keep, different kind of records like that, right? So the same way it happens in the manual systems applies to what you have on the computer-based system, right? So let's look at what is a file name. Like most times when you create documents online or on your laptop or your system, you definitely give it a name. And why do you give it a name? So that it becomes easier for you to search or to find when you need them in future. So what's the file name? The information we store on the storage medium is kept as a file. Importantly, every file must be given a name, and this is called a file name. This is one of the reasons why when you create open any document, even if you don't give it a name, the system gives it a name automatically. Document one or something, so it says, and the computer might not accept the creation of another file with already existing name. That doesn't happen yet, especially if you are saving in the same location on the system. So the computer will never allow you. And that's one benefit of the computer again compared to a manual system. For the manual system, you can have the same files, you can have different files with the same name, but for a computer, it won't work, right? So yes, and let's talk about the two different types of files, the divisions, separations of files that you might have. One was called a system file. And what's the system file all about? These are files that are supplied by the manufacturers of the computer. Remember, we talked about hardware and software. Another software, we have what? Our software that is supplied by manufacturers, by the manufacturer of your laptop, or probably systems that you cannot create for use. So we have system software, we have the application software. You know that, right? Okay, so we have the system files here. Then we also have what's called a user file. This is the file created by the computer users for keeping processed and unprocessed data. So we have the system file and we have the users file. And like where we have the system software and the application software, something similar to that here. Okay, so now let's look at the types of files that we have. Please, I'd like you to pay attention here. The types of files that we have. Number one, we have what's called the historical files. Historical files, you know. I like you to look at this very carefully. Historical files, they can also be called dead files. They can also be called dead files. Why? Why do you call them dead files? Because these are files that that have been processed and you probably do not need anymore. Is that understood? Have been processed, you probably don't need them. So most times, such files are either trashed, you know, you can shred them or destroy them in any way, you know. So that's the kind of files that you do not need per se anymore. Examples of such files are like receipts of goods that have been delivered to you. You know, you do not need, especially if you have done with those goods, you do not need those receipts anymore. So let's discard the receipts and let it go. You know, so those are examples of historical files. You can see just by the image right there showing somebody receiving the goods and the receipts right there. So for what we have on the screen, this contains documents no longer necessary for either current reporting or for creation of other documents. You don't need these documents anymore. These goods have been received, paid for, and charged to the department which ordered them. These are historical files. Let's go what a library file is. A library file. You see, library file contains records not affected by transactions, but used for reference by various personnel in the office. Yes, library files are more or less like they offer guidelines, like they offer you guidelines, like rules, like instructions. You know, yes, that's what the library file does typically. It says that basic function is to define guidelines for performing various activities in the office, as opposed to recording the activities of the business. Exactly. So this one offers you guidelines. You don't take record of what happens daily. They give you guidelines. So these are things you're supposed to do, and these are things you're not supposed to do. Did you understand? It happens mostly when you start working. When you start working, they tell you, okay, this is your job description. This is what you're expected to do, and it's what you are you're not expected to do. Also, you know. So that's what it does mostly. That's what it does mostly. Okay. These files are updated only when a procedure is updated. Only when a procedure or pardon me or a policy becomes outdated. Exactly. So that's the only time when you have to do this kind of files, library files. You know, when you have the procedures, okay, this process, now let's change it. It has to go this other way. Then that procedure will change. And that's when the files and the library files will be updated so that the guideline will be different from what it used to be. So library files are typically files that offer you guidelines, processes on how to achieve or perform some function. So that is what the what's called library files is. So the third type of file is an open file. And the open file is so similar to the historical file. You see, but the difference between the open file and historical file is that the open file is still open, just like the name suggests. It's still open. Another name for the open file is tickler file. As you can see the image right beside it, you know, it's an open file that's still active. You know, so this contains some kind of records as historical file. The difference is that processing is still on. Okay, they may include purchase order not yet received or unpaid and purchase order. All right, so they may include purchase orders not yet received. You understand what that means? It's like, okay, you order something online, you still have your receipt with you have to keep that receipt intact. Or yes, if you put it online, you keep it intact so that by the time whoever is coming to deliver comes in to deliver, the person can verify that you are the real person that made that payment. So that file, that kind of file is still open. Do you understand? That is still open. But once the person delivers to you and you receive, you sign that you received, the person probably crosses out your receipt or punches it or puts a stamp on it to confirm that the good has been delivered. That file, that receipt with you becomes a dead file. You understand the difference between an open file now and a dead file? Yeah. All right. So thank you very much, guys. Okay. So let's look at what file organization is all about. File organization. Is it all about? Okay, how you organize your files? You know, and we have different types of file organization. Number one is what's called a master file. The master file. This is like the boss of all the files. This file, sits there, and every other file comes in and sits in there. So I'm going to use probably a school environment to explain this part. Okay. Or let me use. Can I use the hospital? I'll use any other reference to explain to us. Okay. So the master file is fairly permanent in nature. Usually used to keep the details of students in an institution or all customers in an organization. Okay, so yes, everybody, everything in an academy, those who are currently in whatever grade level they are, and those who have graduated, all have their records in the master file. Is that understood? So whoever has the permission to go use to access it can always go there and refer and get documents, whatever document they get from the master file. Remember, what's called a transaction file. This guy is what is it? What is a transaction file? These are otherwise known as movement file. It's temporary in nature. This type of file contains different transactions created from the source document. It is normally used to update the master file. Okay, take for instance, let me give you an example. Okay, when you wanted to get admitted into your school, your parents will probably give you the form. You fill the form in, and you probably make a payment to get the form. And after making that form, the record, you put in that inside the folder, right? So you move that folder to the academics coordinator to say, oh, I got the form and I pay for the form, and that gives me the right to sit for an exam, an entrance exam to be in this school, right? So the movement from your from the financial department where you make the payment, or the front office where you make the payment, to the academics, or yes, the academic coordinator where you're going to have your exam. There's a movement from that point. So that form is going through a transaction. So once you are done with your exams and you have passed, okay, you probably will be referred to another department where they now say, okay, yes, you passed. Now it's time for us to make your school fee payment and start staying class, get your documents. You know, yeah, you make your school fee payment, fine. Then you file, stick that, it's okay, yes, school fee payment made, book payment for books made, payment for school uniform made. Then you move from there, go back to the procurement department where you now start getting, or your delivery department where you start getting your materials, give you your books. And so the movement of that file from one step to the other makes it go through one form of transaction or the other. And like I always like to use an example too, it happens in the hospital too. In the hospital, when you get to the hospital, um, um, if you're sick, you come to the front office. If you're a registered member, they go through their files. Oh, it's a registered member, you're welcome. But if you're not registered, they register you. You know, the file has started from that point. Then from there, you probably refer to the nurse, a nurse that takes your temperature, takes your other vitals, and needs to be taken. And the nurse now records that in your file and sends that to the doctor, who looks at those vitals and says, oh yeah, I think these things that this doctor, the nurse has said, he knows what questions to ask for that, and then the doctor probably knows what to do. You know, so I'm going to continue this story, this doctor story, using the reference file. So I hope you understand what transaction file is all about, how it moves from one step to the other. So let's look at what the reference file is. A reference file is more or less used to store data needed for reference purpose. It is usually fairly permanent in nature. Examples of reference files include price lists, tables of rates, table of rates of pay, names and addresses, and all of it. Okay, so the reference file typically, let me just use the hospital example to continue this explanation for reference file. Okay, yeah. So now the doctor is done with you and it's okay, yeah, I can see you have this and that. The doctor is writing out what drugs you would need. Now you take your file again, move that file from that doctor to the pharmacist. So the pharmacist gets what the doctor said, and the pharmacist says, okay, you're expected to buy this drug and buy that drug. Now, at that point, the pharmacist probably looks at a record. He looks at another file that is hanging somewhere or pasted somewhere. All right, so as you can see, then the pharmacist gets to look at some kind of document to get, okay, how much does this particular drug cost and how much does that particular drug cost? That guy, that file that the pharmacist is looking at, it's a reference file. That's a reference file. This is used to store data needed for reference purpose. It's usually fairly permanent. It's almost like permanent there in nature, you know, and you have the examples right there. Okay, so let's look at file accessing. What's file access? This refers to the method. This refers to the methods the content of a file can be reached and used for processing. That's what file accessing is, like the word suggests. How do you access a file? This refers to the methods the contents of a file can be reached and used for access. And that is one of the things we'll talk about next. Okay, those are the things we'll talk about next. Okay, so let's look at um, okay, types or method of file organization. Types of method of file organization. Like, okay, how do you access your file? How do you organize? You know, how do you get access into the records inside your file? Okay, so it says there is a common knowledge that many files contain relevant records. The organization of the records on the storage disk can help in how fast data can be retrieved. There are three types of or methods of organizing records in the file. Number one is what we call the sequential file, a sequential organization. You need to say what I mean. So sequential organization is when you have to go through records one after the other, like name suggests, in sequence. You have to go through A, B, C, D, and like that. You know, one of the devices that uses this kind of file is your magnetic tape. Is your magnetic tape. All right. So the magnetic tape is all right, so still under the sequential access, I'm sure you've seen this kind of tapes in your houses before. Okay, so this is the magnetic tape I was trying to talk about. Okay, the way the magnetic tape works is that you can only roll. It rolls. It accesses information one after the other, one after the other. So it means that you cannot just jump to an information directly. You have to go from one step to the other. I'm going to show you a short. So I'm showing you a short video of what it looks like. So as you can see, okay, the information is this part is rolling and it's pulling the cable on this part, you know, and you would see that the cable, the tape is actually passing through the head. This is the head. Okay, I'm still okay, very good. Now you can see that the cable, the tape is being pulled from this end through this head. As you can see that that's it. Okay, that's a magnetic tape right there being pulled through the head, and what that does is that this is the head right there. This is the head right here. That's the head right there. So the tape is going through the head to this part. Okay, to this part. So when this part starts to roll, when it starts to roll, this head, the head here, the head does what? You know, reads the information that has been written on the tape. So it means while this part is rolling, information can only be read one after the other. You know, you can only wait for the information to be read. So if you were looking for information far between this tape, you have to roll the tape, roll the tape, roll the tape until it gets to that point, and that's when you can only see that information. So that's a sequential um, um, means of accessing information. And that's a sequential means of accessing. As you can see that right now. So it starts to take it one after the other. So take, for instance, you're listening to a music, that's a music going right there. So if you want to listen to track two, you either have to be patient for it to get to track two, or you know, fast forward to make it go faster until when it gets to track two. Okay, so that's sequential, like I said before. All right, so guys, that was for sequential. So let's look at the other type is what we call the index type of file organization or method of file organization is what we call the index files. Okay, and what does this mean? It means that there's a unique key that identifies the records, each records. So that unique key is what you use to access the records. So take for instance, you as a student in Juliet Academy, you have your admission number. So if I'm looking for your any detail that's related to you, if I'm looking for the date of birth, the club you are in Juliet Academy, if I'm looking for the name of your parents or any other information I'm looking for about you, all I need to do is look for your that unique identifier. You know, that key, the primary key, and look for that. You know, okay. So and once I get that, I can now get all the information I want to get about you. So that's an indexed file. You know, and it is better than a sequential. You understand? So I don't have to start going through all files one after the other, A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4. All I do is I just look for your admission number. You know, I search for it, I get the file, and I begin to look for the other record I'm looking for. And that has some benefits. It says benefit one is that it makes it possible for frequent updating of large quantities of data without the problem of rearranging or sorting of records. So yes, it makes it easier for me to update information. If I get any information about you, I simply just go to your admission number, take the primary key, I put in the new record there, and that's updated. Instead of me going to A, B, C, D, so to update information about you or a whole lot of people. That's number one. The number two is that it also makes it possible for records to be located quickly without going through the process of sequentially reading the disk. So that's number two benefit. So then have the third form, which is a third type of accessing, which is the direct access files. Direct access files. So this one is the best. You can directly access the file, whatever file you are looking for. It says in direct access file, the key field is used in some way as the address itself. This solves the problem of first looking at the index. Okay, so for instance, I'm looking for your date of birth. I don't have to look for your admission number first. I just go to your date of birth, and that is so direct. So that happens mostly when you listen to music in your houses. You want to listen to music on using your CD right now. So you want to listen to maybe you already know that the part you want to listen to is track 5. Just click to track 5, and it starts to play for you, right? But you can leave also time. If you want to go to 1 hour 15 seconds, just go to 1 hour 15 seconds directly your timeline, and you're directly where you want to be. And that's also used on for hard drives too, and a whole lot of devices, to show that devices like that. So direct access is the best way to access to use access files in a system, right? So now let's look at the basic operations on computer files. Basic operations are things you can do. You can create, you can delete, you can retrieve, you can copy, you can view, you can update, you can open. If all these things you can do on your computer files. Those are the basic operations of computer files, right? So I'm going to add this. What are the effects of file insecurity? When you don't secure your files properly. And like I said from the beginning, the benefit of using a computer file is the fact that one of the benefit I mean to say is that your files can be secured. You can password them, we talked about that, one of the topics like that, okay? So effects of file insecurity, number one, you can lose your data. So if you do not keep your files secure, you can lose your data, and also you can mistakenly overwrite your data. What that means is that you probably have an existing data, and you type in something else, and you mistakenly go and click save on that same data that's existing. It means you will lose what you already had. You already had on the file or document. So what you need to do is you need to save it as another file name, so that you do not overwrite what you already have. Okay. So let's look at methods of file security. How do you keep the files secure? Number one, use backups. You can have external hard drives. You can keep your files safe. You can keep it safe on the cloud, or to just picture your files always safe. Number two, use antivirus so that you do not get attacked by any kind of virus. That's how to keep your files safe. Then you use passwords so that you do not get unauthorized access to your documents. Okay. Then you also have to learn to label your documents properly, so it's easier for you to find whatever you're looking for. It's very important. Then advantages of computer files. You have them right there. Number one, the files are more secured. Number two, they're very fast to access. Number three, less laborious. Number four, they are more reliable. Number five, they're neatly modified. Benefits of computer files. Okay, but they also have their own limitations as well. So we'll look at a few. Number one, it's expensive, right? You know how expensive it is to get a laptop, or to probably even maintain it if it gets bad. Okay. Maybe initial cost though, because you can also argue that to say the manual can be expensive. By the time you start looking for bigger spaces to keep your files, so you have to learn to defend your points anytime you're doing that. Then irregular power supply. You need current power supply to get access to your informations, to be able to use your devices and keep your files, your computer files safe. So if you are using a manual system, there's no light, you simply go to your drawer or your cabinet, you pull it out, and always access your files. But if you're using the system, especially if you're saving something on the internet, on the cloud, probably need internet too to be able to access those files kept in the cloud. So look at those are kind of the limitations that you probably would have if you're using a computer file. Okay, right. So I'm giving you an assignment using a real life scenario. Describe an official instance where the three methods of file organization is adopted. I mean, create a real life scenario of yours. I've given you a few, So create one yourself and let's see how creative you can be. Thank you very much, guys. I still remain your one and only ICT teacher, Mr. Adeyemi. Thank you, guys. God bless you.